Welcome back to the Leaders Who Love What They Do podcast. I'm Anne Collins, your host, an executive and leadership coach. And I'm absolutely delighted to have Anna Anderson with me today on the show. Thank you so much, Anna.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Always love chatting with you, Anne.
Pleasure likewise. Pleasure shared. So today I'm just so pleased to have Anna back, and in fact she's already been to talk to some people in my Facebook group. So I'm absolutely delighted that she's agreed to come back and talk to us again. Now Anna herself has an amazing story to tell of her own personal transformation, and we're going to hear a little bit about that later on. And she works now as a highly regarded life coach, specializing in helping women to find joy, peace and acceptance. So women often come to her initially wanting to lose weight and feel physically much better. But Anna does so much more than that. She really helps women to unlock their limiting beliefs and actually transform their lives. That's not an exaggeration. So you might be thinking, well, what's all this got to do with leadership? Well, in fact, it's got everything to do with leadership, because we know that one of the major challenges facing leaders at the moment is preventing burnout, not only in themselves for leaders, but also for the people who work for them in their teams. And we know that ensuring that organizations are places where people can actually thrive and not just survive is absolutely key. So, and in today's context, especially when we read about the Great Resignation, about people looking for maybe different ways of living, it's absolutely vital that as leaders in organizations that we take this seriously, that we take well-being seriously, and that it's not just another program that's tacked on to tick a box. So I'm going to be asking Anna a lot about this and really making the most of her time with us, to ask her firstly about her own story, then her approach to helping people actually thrive, and finally we're extremely happy to hear about her book. She's got a wonderful new book that's just been published, and it's already topping the charts. So lots to talk about. Thanks again, Anna. Let's dive in. Just to start, could you tell us a little bit about your own story of transformation? I know that you were in a corporate job yourself, so you understand very well the pressures that people are under. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how things evolved for you and what was key for you in that transformation?
Absolutely. I loved working in corporate. It really worked for me, and I was very lucky to work in an organisation that was very people focused. And so it was a lot of fun until my life really, really changed and I had a baby on my own. I became a single mum, and all of a sudden the things that were working in a company that was quite young, that, you know, everybody else was quite young and there was a lot of partying and it was a lot of fun to work at, those things weren't working for me anymore. And I had in the meantime moved from London out of the city because I was now a mum and I wanted to bring my son up in a different place. And so I found myself in a position where I hadn't slept for a very long time. Isaac didn't sleep for 4 years. I was a single mum, so it was the main income coming into the house, and so I felt very tied to that. And he was at nursery, which the expenses are enormous, and then I had a commuting bill and commuting in and out of London for 3 hours a day, and then running to get him and get home, and it was just not possible to carry on. And it wasn't the fault of the organisation in any way, but life didn't allow me to be able to be a mum and have the time that I wanted with my son and do my job well. And I remember just sitting in meetings just thinking, I can't even focus, I'm so tired, you know. And even a company that was actually really set up to be people focused, now I look back, had very little understanding on what it is like to have a family. I remember being told that I was going to go off and have a lovely holiday on my maternity leave, and, you know, just things that are maybe slightly inappropriate. That was 11 years ago, so hopefully things are changing all of the time. But I reached a point where all my wheels came off and I was using old coping mechanisms. I was drinking too much, my diet was awful, I hadn't slept. I would say I was depressed. I was also recovering from PTSD because of personal things with birth and trauma and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time, and it did. And I decided to hand my notice in, which was really terrifying because my identity was wrapped up in my job. I thought that was it. I'm a single mom, I'm struggling, at least I have a good job. So there was a lot of identity tied up in that. It was very, very hard. But I remember going in feeling like an imposter, feeling like I was failing, feeling like I wasn't doing a good job, I couldn't focus, going from actually really thriving in that company to really, really struggling and feeling very visible in that.
Yeah, really. And I think that just highlights just how difficult it is when you have a company, even with the best intentions in the world. It can be really hard to look after people, in fact, so that they can thrive. And when life changes, especially at those tipping points. I mean, now, Anna, you help people to move forward and transform and to change things and to move from that place of really feeling like you're not coping. What does it mean to you when people say they want to thrive, or as coaches, when we talk about people needing to thrive? What does that mean?
For me, I think it means that you're coming from an internal sense of self-esteem and confidence. And I feel that our society and our life, certainly for me and now the people that I work with, I was chasing the external tick boxes. I was doing the things that I was told would make me happy. You know, I went to university, I got a good job, I went traveling, I did all of those things, but I had no sense of internal identity or worth, in fact. And I had a lot of limiting beliefs. And so whilst I was living a life that was working in a sense, it didn't really matter. But when all of those wheels came off and all of a sudden my life changed and everything was being really, really challenged, the things that were bubbling underneath in terms of my limiting beliefs, the way that I spoke to myself, my mindset, the way I felt about my body, the way I felt about all sorts of different things that I think we're conditioned to believe, either from societal conditioning or how we've been parented. There are all sorts of factors to consider. They were unconscious and they all of a sudden started to become very, very difficult to live with. So I think that when someone comes to talk to me about wanting to thrive, and as you said when you introduced me, often women are coming to me because it's about their health and they think it's that they want to lose weight, because again, as women, we've been taught that that's where our value is, that's what our worth is. At least if I look okay, then I can be of worth, you know. And so my work is very much about realizing our worth sits within us. It's not defined by our career, it's not defined by our income, it's not defined by who we are, anything outside of ourselves. It's just innate. It sits in. And I think that is something that needs to be taught at school. And so when someone says to me, I want to thrive, it's building a deep relationship with ourselves from within rather than trying to prove who we are from without. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're thinking of it as at an organizational level, I mean, feeling physically better and in terms of well-being programs, it's often that people think of, isn't it? And they might put classes on and that's great. That's a great start. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, all of those things, which are lovely, of course, they're lovely. And, you know, I think that's what a lot of companies do. Well, what should we do? You know, let's get them eating some fruit and give them a nice Christmas party. It's all well and good. And what we're talking about here is a much, much deeper foundational core work where you've got people who really feel supported. They really feel seen, but also they know how to develop those skills for themselves. You know, that it's the personal development piece of, it's not an external tick box. So if I've given them an hour's coaching a month, I've given them some fruit, you know, can't they just get on with it? It's really giving people personal development plans and support, something that I didn't have. Now I look back with the hindsight that I have and the experience that I have now, I didn't have someone to aspire to. I didn't have someone to be inspired by. So there was nothing to kind of keep that energy going. And I think that's so important, but also to really help people understand the power of our mindset and our belief system and why we do what we do and why we feel what we feel. And that's so important. And, you know, one of the things that I consistently see in organizations and something that I was working on regularly, really good people that are great at their job being so great at their job that they become people managers. And I think that that's an issue across business, but they don't have the people management skills through no fault of their own. And it becomes this middle management issue. And then all of a sudden you've got really great people being managed by people. You know, if you've got a great talent management system and you've got people being managed by people that are not good at management, because you can't, it's not about just being good at your job. It's a very, very different skill. Absolutely. And I think that's really important.
I'd just like to come back to something that you said there that I thought was really interesting, because as well as talking about the personal development plans and looking at mindset, I think maybe what you're also saying is about people feeling that they're seen, feeling that they're heard, and feeling that they really have a place in the organization. So is it actually, it's a cultural question as well?
Massively. It has to come from the ground up as well as the top down. And that's so very important that, you know, there's collaboration conversation and this conversation. And, you know, it stems all the way through, doesn't it? From how you're recruiting and your recruitment plans and how you're getting your talent through the business and how you're fostering them and looking after them and building that culture of a community where people are working together well.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You want to go to work, and you want your employees to want to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when organizations are thinking about well-being, I mean, obviously it's much more challenging if we start to think of it as developing a whole culture around well-being. But I think what you're saying is that, well, if we don't, it remains a cherry on the cake and that's it.
I think it's the principle of where a business should begin. How do we want people to feel when they work for us? I think that's the basis of everything. How do we want people to feel when they experience sales through us? How do we want people to feel in this business and working with this business and buying from this business? If you build from there, it works.
Yeah. And what do you think in terms of helping people to really sort through those limiting beliefs and to thrive in a work situation, but also outside of work? What do you see are the most important areas?
It's really important for people to know who they are. So I used to run personality profiling programs, and then we would develop development programs from there. And if you're recruiting people that are coming into the business like I was, who was, you know, relatively green, who didn't have a huge amount of life experience, had come, you know, a year's traveling, but then gone to university. And I mean, maybe young people are learning these things more, but just knowing that there are different people in the world, knowing that there are different personality types, knowing that different people speak and communicate in different ways. And yeah, I might like to get up and go and stand next to someone's desk and have a chat, and that's where I get my energy from because I'm an extrovert, but other people don't like that. It's okay to know how you like, it's okay to work differently, and it's important to know how you like to work differently and to communicate those things.
Yes.
And to celebrate those things, that differences are really of value. You know, you wouldn't want me developing your software because I'm not going to do that well, and that's okay. You need to have different people doing different things. So that's the first thing, a cross-organizational business and as an individual, knowing strengths and skills and talents and being able to foster those. And one of the things that we used to do was looking at where you're really strong out of the office and where you maybe are not bringing those skills into the office, and why might you be doing that? I don't work in organizations, but I really think that, you know, the people that I work with, of course, as they start to get strength within themselves, it's going to impact them in every area of their life. And one of the things is overcoming trauma. And when I talk about trauma, we tend to think of that as a really big thing that might have happened as a tragic event in a child's life. But everyone experiences trauma, and trauma is thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. You know, a lot of the work that I do is using tools like EFT, emotional freedom technique, to help us understand the beliefs that we are having, that we have created in our own subconscious pre-7. In those formative years, and understanding why we do what we do, why we think how we think, and why we have beliefs within us that are limiting but are actually keeping us safe. So if we can start to explore those, if we can start to understand why we might not feel good enough or why we might not feel worthy, because everyone has those, why we might feel like an imposter, why we might not feel confident in certain areas, and start to develop and understand them and be shown through a program. You know, I don't know an organization that really helps that personal development. Maybe there is, but it would be incredible to grow through those and understand that they are there to keep you safe, and actually they're not true. Then you start to have people thriving. And so I think that that's so important. So what are your values? What are your beliefs? Where are they limiting you? And developing mindset practices that help empower people so that they can make great choices and be working from a place of confidence and self-esteem in business.
Yes. And when you're working with people and they do start to thrive, what kind of differences do you see?
Everything in their life changes, and that is not an understatement. I believe in energy. I think we are energy, and I think the energy that we put out in the world is the energy that we get back. And so if people are coming at life from a fractured, tired, exhausted, fearful state, that's what you're going to experience back, and that's what you're going to have in your workforce. You know, if you've got that across the board in your workforce, that's what you're going to get in your business. And so, you know, it really is about looking at the individual. And when I'm working with the people that I work with, their relationships change, the way they parent changes, the way they think changes, opportunities change, how they work in their business changes, whether it's a personal business, whether they're, you know, self-employed or run their own business, whether they're employed, things change, or they might leave a job and they might go and get a new job. They start to believe in themselves and life becomes enjoyable. And for me,
that's amazing.
That's what it's all about. You know, if we can't be happy, then what can we be?
Yes.
And so everything changes, I feel, when we fire ourselves up from within and we really look at getting resource rather than trying to be resourced from the outside.
And I think that's so important that you're talking about, that we have to start from within. And I think that when, particularly for organizations, when they're looking at how to support their people, how to provide personal development, we have to accept that work from within, well, for a start, it takes time as well, doesn't it? You can't do a one afternoon session and everything is okay. This is a long-term, a cultural change. It's a long-term investment. Yeah. But yes, the changes can be drastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
I mean, I worked for a company that did have a people focus and they recruited great people, but we spent thousands putting values on the wall, you know?
Yeah.
And that was that. And then you had to remember them and tell people them, but they weren't lived. You know, it takes real finesse to bring things down through the business. It takes real intention to make sure that you're bringing all of those things to life in business. I think it's very different to painting something on a wall and saying, these are our values, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And as you said, turning them into behaviors, what does that actually look like on a daily level? You know, if whatever value it is, if that's important to us, how does that translate into how I am when I arrive at the office, how I greet people in the reception area? What does that look like? And also to keep that conversation alive. I think sometimes businesses, they have that conversation once and then it's like, oh, well, we've done that. We've ticked that off the box. So we have to keep it going. And I'm wondering, is it the same kind of thing, would you say, when people are really doing that inner work? Would you say it is an ongoing process?
Oh, so much so. I mean, as you asked me that question, an email just popped into my inbox before we started talking saying, I run a group coaching program as well as doing one-to-one work. And I did your group coaching program a year ago. And whilst I was going through the program, I might not have been that present and I didn't share very much, but I just want to let you know that a year on, the things that you were teaching are really embedding for me. And I'm seeing massive change in my life. And this stuff takes time because we're undoing lifelong patterns, lifelong beliefs that have been embedded into us to keep ourselves safe. You know, I really think it's important to go back to the fact that we're not that different to how we were 100,000 years ago. We might think we are, but we're not programmed to be any different. And so safety is so important, and feeling safe in the workplace and making sure that we're not stressed. And I think, you know, stress is a big thing we'll come on to in a moment, but making sure that we are really doing the work consciously and continuously and moving through it, and knowing that we can be kind to ourselves and give ourselves space to do this work. That I kind of look at life as an evolution, that it's okay to be growing and learning all of the time. And in fact, we should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd just like you to tell us a little bit about your wonderful book, Anna, because it's just doing so well. And and I know that it's just going down very well with lots of people. The reviews that I've seen online are just amazing. So do tell us a little bit about it and especially where we can order it.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. So it's called From the Inside Out. It's kind of a book of two halves. The first part is about my journey, and everything that I teach and everything that I do comes from my own personal experience of my own depths of the wheels coming off and hitting rock bottom to where I am now. And, you know, the more I share my story and the more I speak my truth, the more people come forward and say, yeah, me too. I think I'm so passionate about storytelling. I'm so passionate about speaking with vulnerability and honesty and sharing our experiences, because I think when we do that, then everyone else can feel safe to do the same and recognize that they're not as on their own as perhaps we might feel we are sometimes. And so the book's about that. And then it's about, you know, one of the things that I specialize in is why we get stuck in dieting and why dieting doesn't work. And so it's about that. It's about actually really undoing the layers of the onion, as we call it, and getting into the core of who you are. And I think doesn't necessarily guide us to do that sometimes. So thank you.
I think it's great. I think it's amazing because it is a very different kind of book, because a lot of diet books are not at all like that, are they? Can you tell us how is yours different? Because I know it is very different.
Well, it doesn't talk about food.
Yeah.
So, you know, and of course, and I'm a trained health coach, and, you know, one of the reasons that I do what I do and one of the reasons my life has changed is because I changed my food first. And I was astounded, really, what I do, because first I wanted everyone to feel what I felt when I changed my food and started eating differently. I didn't know that we could feel this well. I didn't know that we could have this much energy. I didn't know this. I lived to diet. I'd eaten to diet, and and eaten for pleasure, and I still eat for pleasure. I love food, but it was kind of this feast or famine kind of approach, and a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And then I learned that I could eat in a very, very different way, and I felt so well. And I really wanted the world to know that you could feel amazing, and that actually there was a very different way of living. And then as I started to move through my work, I'm telling people to eat like this, but they're not doing it. Why don't we do why don't we do things that are easy for us to do? Why don't we do things to help us feel better? And that's where my work has grown into belief systems much more. And I'm really, really passionate about belief systems now, and think that's the core of everything, because I got fascinated into why wouldn't you do this?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what the book's about, really. It's about our belief systems. It's about feminine energy. And I think that that's a really important thing to talk about in the workplace as well. I don't know how much time we have. I could talk to you about it all.
Yeah, do tell us about that.
I think one of the things that I see in business that is struggling is this celebration of masculine energy. And when I talk about feminine and masculine, I'm not talking about men and women, and I'm not coming at it from a negative place in any way at all. But what I'm talking about is kind of doership and the celebration of goals and action and getting things done, and the disregard of maybe more people oriented emotion and feeling, the feminine aspect, the nurturing side. And certainly my experience of not having a baby and working as a woman in business and being able to be in that masculine sense of self and push and drive and work late and go out with the boys after work and drink and do all of those things was fine until I had a child. And then I didn't feel as respected or as regarded. I couldn't work in the same way. And again, I know things are changing, but it wasn't safe for me to bring that emotion into the business. I had to hide it. And I found that very, very difficult. I was really struggling with that. And I think a lot of women I speak to now, you thrive in leadership if you are in your masculine, and that makes it really difficult. And I know that business thrives when you have a balance of both. And so it's bringing this sense of nurturing energy into business and realizing that we can still make money, we can still thrive, we can still be abundant if we do both, and so it's just bringing this balance of wholeness and celebrating all aspects of humans into business, I think, and into life. And so a lot of what I do is teaching women how to make space for them to be in their creative space and not stressed.
It's also something that men benefit from as well, because in business also, especially now, we need people to be very creative, but also men are much more interested in supporting their families, not just financially, but they want to be part of that. And I think that's been a massive change over the last 20 years that we see in business. So I think it's as you say, it's not men and women, is it? It's different values, culture. Yes, absolutely.
Definitely. And that's so important to recognize. And I think safety is really important to talk about, because stress is a huge factor in business. It costs, I don't know, you probably know more than I do, but it costs millions every year in business. If people were not feeling unsafe, or they felt that they were able to explore these things or feel what they're feeling, then I think that it would bring into balance, and we would have less sick time. So it's about health. It really bleeds into everything.
Yes, and I think managing emotions is a big thing for men and for women. But in business, for so long, it's been the message of, well, just get on with it. And I think that just get on with it can be very damaging for some people and can really block their careers, in fact, because that ultimately doesn't help, more than I do. But I think it's about allowing people, men and women, to be themselves and to bring their whole authentic selves into their work.
That's exactly it, and I have this conversation with my 11-year-old son. Feel all your feelings. There's nothing wrong with all of those things, because once we process things, we can move forward. It's okay to feel, and I think it's really important to celebrate that. And there's a reason that the highest cause of death in the UK amongst men under 40 is suicide, because we're not feeling safe to feel feelings. This is really serious stuff. This impacts everybody and can really make massive transformation in business and lives, in families, if we're able to feel and if we're able able to, as you say, lead from our authentic self. I think that business can transform when we do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Anna. Just before we go, I'd really like us to have the information where we can buy your book, because I'm not sure everybody heard that. I think I spoke over you just at that moment. So if you could just repeat that, please.
Yeah, of course. It's called From the Inside Out, and it is on Amazon. So yeah, easy to find.
Great. And I will put the link in the show notes. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you'll find it in the notes. And if you're listening to it on the podcast or via our website, you'll find that information about Anna's book with a link, so that you can hop over to Amazon and you can get your copy. Anna, where else can people find you if they want to get in touch with you, to either to make contact or to work with you or to find out more?
Absolutely. My website is www.annaandersonc.com. I'm on Instagram at iam.annaanderson. So if you go to one of those places, then you'll be able to find me from there, definitely. I'm easy to find, Anne.
Yeah, great. And once again, we'll have all of those links in the notes, so you can click on there, or else Anna and I are also connected on social media everywhere, so you can also just find her through me as well there. Well, thank you so much, Anna. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I just feel that what you bring is so important, not just to women but to men as well, and this idea of thriving in all senses is just so important and transformative, not just for individuals but for businesses, for organizations, but for people in their lives in all areas. So thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me, Anne.
Well, thanks to our listeners. Thanks to you for joining us. Do join us again to meet another leader who loves what they do. And for all the details, again, do go to the show notes or pop over to bluebottlecoaching.com. Thanks again. Bye-bye.